Hey guys, it's Hegedus E, physical therapist here. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about lumbar stenosis, what it is, how to identify whether you have it or not, and some exercises to help with the relief of your symptoms. Lumbar stenosis is basically encroachment of your spinal nerves, whether it is the spinal cord or the nerve roots in itself. And these are places where compression is highly likely to occur. There's a couple places in the spine, particularly the lumbar spine, that stenosis can occur. The stenosis in the lumbar spine can occur in the spinal canal. The spinal canal is basically the tunnel that's created by the vertebrae that protects the spinal cord. So it's basically where the yellow is. And that's the tunnel that's created by the vertebrae. And the canal in itself is basically one long hole that comes from the brain. And this is, when it's stenotic, it can essentially narrow as a result of arthritis or degenerative changes that are happening in the spinal canal itself. And as a result of that, it's putting compression, or what they say encroachment, of the spinal cord, and that can lead to pain down in both the legs. Other places that lumbar stenosis can occur are on these openings called intervertebral foramens. Now these foramens on the spine model here is the opening that allows the nerve roots to come out. The nerve roots here are yellow. And the nerve roots are extensions of the spinal cord that essentially connects to the muscles of the lower part of the body. And these holes, or these foramens, they can be arthritic, they can develop osteophytes, or what they call bone spurs. Anything that essentially results in compression or narrowing, resulting in encroachment of those nerves, and it can result in symptomatic leg pain, especially on one side. Like if this is the front, this is the left side, this is the right side. If there's narrowing on this level or this level, then you can have pain down the right side of the leg. So with the way stenosis usually presents clinically is that most people do not like extension-based activities. Extension-based activities is when essentially you're standing up straight, where you're extended, or you're kind of extending backwards. Any activity that requires your spine to extend, the spine does not like, particularly because it flares it up, and that actually is creating more encroachment or narrowing of those nerves. So here's a spine here. This is the low back. This is L5, L4, L3, L2, L1. So the 5 vertebrae here essentially create your lumbar spine. So if you go into extension, if you see the canals are on the side here, and extension actually narrows the spinal canal and the intervertebral foramens, resulting in more compression and more encroachment. Which is why for symptom relief, flexion is the direction that you want to go to for stenosis, because when you flex the vertebrae, you're actually opening the canal and opening the foramen, resulting in a decompression of those nerves or nerve roots that you're irritating. So then that way you can let the inflammation pass and then do other things to strengthen and stabilize it. Extension-based activities usually include standing, walking for a period of time, going downstairs or going down a hill, or laying on your stomach. Those are activities that promote extension of your spine, which in the case for lumbar stenosis, more narrowing. Flexion-based activities usually include things like sitting, going upstairs or going up a hill, or laying on your back with your knees up. Those are positions in which you would find relief in, because that puts your spine into more bending or flexion, which then creates more of an opening. So then that way the nerves are not as irritated. There's a clinical prediction rule out there for lumbar stenosis from an article that was published back in 2011. With this clinical prediction rule, there's 5 criteria you have to meet for you to meet the extremely likely category of having lumbar stenosis. So the clinical prediction rule for the 5 criteria is as follows. Number 1 is if you have bilateral leg pain. Number 2 is you have more leg pain than back pain. Number 3 is there's pain during walking or standing activities. And then 4 is there's pain relief with sitting. And then the last one, number 5, is your age is greater than 48 years of age. So if all 5 of these criteria apply to you, then it's very indicative that these symptoms are pointing towards lumbar stenosis. If you only have 1 or 2 and you have other symptoms that are not on this list, it's less likely that it's pointing towards lumbar stenosis. So that's how these clinical prediction rules work. I'll post the research article in the link below so you can view it for your reference. Now let's go into some exercises to help with those symptoms. Since flexion is the key to relief of pain, then all of these exercises are basically focused around flexion of the spine. So the first exercise is called single knee to chest. This is a very classic lumbar stenosis exercise in the field of physical therapy. Very straightforward. You basically bring one knee and then you just bring it towards your chest. You're just promoting flexion from the bottom of the spine up. And then you hold it here for about 10 seconds and then you can alternate to the other side. You can always hold this. I typically have people hold it for 20 to 30 seconds. 10 seconds is fine too. If you're having some knee issues, if pushing the knee to end range flexion is a problem, you can go ahead and just grab behind the knee so that you're not putting as much bending in the knee. So it's basically the same kind of on the other side, just like that. The next one is a bit of a progression. It's double knee to chest. So you're basically bringing both knees and creating a little bit more flexion from bottom up of your spine. Again, if you have some knee issues, you can just go ahead and grab the back of your knee to prevent end range flexion. And this is the same thing. You're just holding that 20-30 seconds, doing that a couple times, basically as long as you can tolerate it. And this is a symptom relieving position, then you can kind of hang out here for a little bit. The third one is a piriformis stretch. There's multiple ways to do this. At the end of the day, you're stretching out the glutes and you're basically promoting flexion. So you're taking one leg and you get into a figure 4 position. You grab this knee and then you pull it towards the opposite shoulder. So I'm taking my left knee and pulling it towards the opposite shoulder, my right shoulder here. If you're doing this right, you should feel a stretch in your glutes here. Again, with knee pain, this actually shouldn't be that much of an issue because you're not going into too much bending, but you can always put your hand behind your knee here and then just kind of pulling it towards the opposite shoulder. You can do the same on the other side, pulling it towards the opposite shoulder here. Now, if you don't really feel much of a stretch in this position, you can always increase the progression. So this one's a little bit more aggressive of a stretch. It basically does the same thing. You go ahead and just loop your hands in between your knees and then you're just kind of grabbing that. You get more of a glute stretch. You're basically getting more flexion. If you can tolerate this, I would recommend doing the progressed version. But if you're symptomatic or it's creating pain in your low back when you're bringing your legs up like this because it requires a bit more core control, then stick with the first one, where you just grab your knee and just pull it towards the opposite shoulder. So the next one is called child's pose or prayer stretch. This is done on all fours. All you're gonna do is you're just gonna lean back and bring your butt towards your heel. Basically, you're just promoting more flexion here. You can have your arms extended and then bring your chin towards your chest. So then that way you're having more flexion. Now, if this is a position that's irritating for your shoulders, if you're having some shoulder issues going into overhead reach, you can just go onto your elbows. So that way you can still do this exercise. You're just kind of pushing onto your elbows and you're just kind of rocking back into flexion. You can hang out here for 10 to 30 seconds as long as you can tolerate it, and just making sure you're pain-free in this position. Cat camels is the next exercise. So you're actually only going to do half of the cat camel because the full cat camel promotes flexion and extension. So the full cat camel looks like this. You're going into spinal extension and then you're going into spinal flexion. So you're actually just finding neutral, and neutral is where the between full extension and full flexion is. So kind of find where that is. This is the position at which there's a little bit of a curve in my low back here. So that's essentially where neutral spine is. In this position, you're just gonna go into flexion. So basically the cat part of the cat camel. And you're kind of going back and forth here. You can hold it at the end for 10 to 20 seconds. going into flexion, and then going back to neutral. Going into flexion, and then going back into neutral. Seated trunk flexion is the next exercise, and this is a great position because you're starting in sitting already. So if you're sitting, this is already a position of relief because there's already some opening of the spinal canal or those foramens, and then you're basically going into more bending or more flexion to promote more opening, hopefully to give you more relief. So the exercise looks like this. You're seated with both your feet on the ground, and you're just reaching down towards the ground with both your hands, and then you're coming back up, okay? And then now you're reaching towards one side, and then you're coming back up. And then now you're reaching towards the other side, and then you're coming back up from there. With each one, again, you can hold for 20-30 seconds. So the last exercise that I have for you is basically a standing forward fold. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna stand, and all you're gonna do is reach down and touch your toes because that is full bending, and that promotes opening of their spinal canals or the foramens. So you're standing, and then you're just reaching down, trying to touch your toes as far as you can go. If not, it's okay, and you're just hanging out here because that promotes all that flexion and all that opening, so to give you a little bit more relief. Very similar to the seated trunk flexion, you can reach one way, add a little bit of rotation to it. If you reach over to the left, you're actually opening the right a little bit more, or if you reach the other way to the right, you're actually opening the left a little bit more. So when you're doing these stretches, you gotta just make sure it's to your tolerance, and you should be able to move in a pain-free manner. There may be a little bit of discomfort while you're doing this, but again, that's okay. You just want to make sure at the end of the day, when you're doing these exercises, you need to be less symptomatic than when you started it. So if you meet the 5 criteria for the clinical prediction rule of lumbar stenosis, but you have additional rapidly progressing symptoms, such as losing bowel or bladder control while you're having these symptoms, or lower extremity weakness, meaning that's weakness that's happening in your legs that's resulting in falls or loss of balance, things of that nature, you should not try to take care of this on your own. This video is particularly for if you just meet those 5 criteria from the clinical prediction rule. If you have other rapidly progressing symptoms, especially if it's getting worse, I would highly recommend you to check out your physician, because those are symptoms and presentations that are usually associated with things on the more severe scale. So if you have those things, I would not go off of this YouTube video and try to take care of this on your own and just seek help. Let me know in the comment section below whether you find these exercises to be helpful or not. If you found it informative, please like and subscribe. I will see you guys in the next video. Thanks for watching.